Hello, thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk about um, managing technology, specifically information systems technology in the modern digital world. So, just as a quick review, um, computer technology we define as a combination of hardware and software, and these two components are used in the context of IT for processing and storing information. Generally, the context of our discussion today is around business information. Obviously, there are other types of computer technology components that are used for other types of systems, personal systems, um, engineering, lab systems, so on. We're going to talk in the context or discuss technology in the context of systems for business implementations. The second piece of IT is the communication technology that's in play, namely voice, data, networks. And these systems are independent and work in concert with software and hardware. And they're primarily responsible for transmitting information from one piece of software that's operating on a computer to another piece of software that's operating on another computer, perhaps either within the enterprise or outside of the enterprise. So, our context of discussion today around IT is scoped around these two areas of information technology. Throughout the course, we're going to be examining um, uh, information technology in four different areas. One, and the first and foremost area is going to be around the availability of these systems, the emerging technology trends, and so on, around hardware, software, networks, and data. We'll then move on in a subsequent module within the semester to discuss software applications, specifically e-business applications, operational applications, or business operations related applications, analytics, BI systems, and so on. We'll then also be discussing best practices for acquiring and implementing systems, whether it makes sense to build systems or buy them off the shelf. And finally, the last part of the course is going to focus on managing these technology projects. In many cases, these projects can be very large, multi-million dollar, multi-year implementations, and they use up valuable not only systems or technology folks in a company, but also business folks, because business folks are increasingly responsible or held responsible for success towards implementation projects, systems implementation projects. So, and surrounding systems projects are some of the major issues that or challenges that plague the industry, namely around social, ethical, legal, liability, and IP related issues. So we'll be covering that in a later part of the course. We all know that technology and systems have been very pervasive. Everyone who's been working in any kind of industry segment will have encountered or been a active participant in a systems implementation project, perhaps a new system that is being released or something that is being worked on. IT is not always just used by back office. All frontline folks and partners in the ecosystem are impacted. More and more people and employees rely on these systems to accomplish their own job roles. Business managers are increasingly, as I mentioned, responsible for success and are accountable or held accountable for the investments made. And a large part of capital expenditures that are spent in a particular company revolve around technology and increasing focus. IT is always involved um, uh, in modern day business in this digital world in helping create a competitive advantage, linking emerging processes from one area of the business to another. Many implementations, systems implementations, are global in nature and span different nations across the world, many of which have disparities in terms of job function, job roles, people, the labor arbitrage problem. And technology actually helps enable leveling or equalizing some of these differences that we have, thereby conducting or thereby resulting in a more productive enterprise that serves customers not only in local countries but globally. So technology is definitely enabling business increasingly, and I'm sure many of you listening to this this session can relate to it from your own walks of life in the industrial world. So, computer hardware, obviously, as we all know, have evolved. We've evolved from microcomputers, and now pretty much every one of us has a phone in our pocket. We call them the smartphones, and they are increasingly changing and enabling us to stay connected and to do processing and use applications throughout the day, both personally and professionally. So, as a result, prices have dropped, and we're seeing high growth and efficiencies transpire as results of this evolution. Software is going to be a large part of what we focus on in this class throughout the semester. And as we know, software is best known as the integrated, downloadable, and social components of information technology, right? We've got the growth of the web, we've got marketing tools, we've got collaboration tools to help us all navigate the business world using tools on our phones, on our desktops, what have you. Download and upload speeds are facilitated these days to enable some of these growth areas, and as you can see, bandwidth has increased considerably over the last 10 years. We're able to watch movies on our phone. We're able to stream large amounts of data across different replicated databases all over the world. So proliferation is a mild way to state how software is rapidly evolving. We also have a third component of networks. Networks connect the hardware and software, as I mentioned earlier, as witnessed by the high bandwidth that we've been talking about, wireless access, cloud. These are things that we're going to be discussing. And this also has evolved significantly. Many apps are now available on the cloud when they used to be available on the desktop or even the phone. And we're making, the industry is helping software be ever accessible by all, regardless of the device and the power of the devices that we have locally. So watch for this trend coming forward. Most of you have started to experience it. We'll be discussing various aspects of this throughout this class, but it's something that we're all experiencing and seeing the thrust of the evolution in this area. And networks are all making this possible, right? The network is the key enabler of cloud technologies. So there are new ways for businesses to use IT to compete based on all of these evolutionary aspects in hardware, software. There's cost, this differentiation, and these are the two big drivers of how companies choose to combine their network, hardware, and software elements to achieve competitive advantage, right? And that's what they're trying to do, and IT is on the forefront, or should be on the forefront in enabling this. Also, this latest and greatest experience that we've all had and had to live with COVID, we have increasingly appreciated the power of all of these systems that are in play to enable us to telecommute. We have, if we hadn't before, we know what work at home looks like now and how, in fact, productive we can be. Some of us are enjoying the work-life balance it's allowing. I have to say, personally, sometimes it can get a little bit boring because we're social beings and we need to be out there in the real world interacting in real business meetings and real personal meetings. But technology is certainly finding new ways of connecting us and keeping us productive. Virtual teams have also proliferated as a result. We've always seen virtual teams grow in the last, I would say, 20 years in the IT business. We've really expanded. There hasn't been a single project that I've worked on in the last 20 years for a client that hasn't had at least one or more virtual teams. And right now, all of the projects that I work on at my company are literally 100% virtual, right? And COVID obviously has reinforced that, but virtual teams are they're here to stay, and they're pretty much going to be the new way of conducting business. And robust software, hardware, and networks all make this possible. So the IS system, or sometimes it's called IT departments or IS departments, technology divisions of a company. These are organizational units that have primary responsibility of managing through IT, all of the IT and technology projects. They vary greatly in terms of the investments companies are making, and how they're organized. But the organization relies on a fully functional, able, and efficient IT organization. I have to tell you, many times this isn't the case, and so there's always a rub. There's always changes in management, changes in staff. It's a fast-moving area, an area that's hard to find good skills to compete. And but there's an increased need to make these departments more reliable, more secure, and leading edge, because, as I mentioned earlier, they are being looked upon as a source of competitive advantage in a company. So, but they are, as a result, changing rapidly. There's two different modes that these IS and IT organizations operate in. First one I'd like to just highlight is a support mode. If an IT organization is considered to be in support mode, you'll see things like a low level of engagement between business and IT. There's more of like keep the lights on environment or feeling, and that's how these groups are organized if they're in support mode. They tend to be lower cost, lower skill set, and they're used as support functions, right, to keep things going. On the other hand, the more interesting IT organizations operate in a strategic mode. Here's in this sort of type of organization, characteristics are high need for IT to become a competitive advantage. They're generally reliable, secure. They have proper support mechanisms in place, proper SLAs in place. SLAs stand for service level agreements. And they're highly functional and highly functioning, high performing organizations. And the business, therefore, then strategically depends on these types of this type of IT organization to enable their new business strategies, right? So, many of you might contrast this to where you're working. Think about whether your IT operates more in a strategic mode or in a support mode, or somewhere in between, and where you'd like to see them or you think they need to be to serve the overall business needs. Something to sort of reflect on in your own work environments for those of you who are listening to this talk and working in industry. So again, in IT is no different than any other function in that it itself has a need for infrastructure to function. There's a human resources component, which means there's people, there's organizations, there's career paths, those kinds of things to keep everybody engaged properly and to create a professional working environment. IT people need to be highly technical, but they also need to be increasingly business focused and understand the business drivers. to be able to meet and assess business requirements. So they're not just technology programmers anymore. They're considered strategic partners or key partners to the business community that operate within the company. And so a strong part of that is that the IT groups have to, and individuals have to build and strengthen their relationships. And I can tell you from experience, I've seen a lot of gaps in my career where IT and business sort of function um, in a sort of more adversarial capacity rather than a partnering capacity. So one of my jobs as a consultant is to enable IT functions to operate in a high-performing strategic mode so that they are able to be trusted advisors of their business counterparts. Um, and finally, just to round out this introductory discussion on information technology and how it's all structured in a company, this is a sample org chart that you might see in an organization where the CIO reports to a very high-level C-level executive. Many times it's the CEO, and many times also the COO. But I've also seen where COOs and CIOs are counterparts reporting into the CEO. So, and then the CIO has a technology group that spans, systems, network, architecture, operations. IT finance is a very specific area of finance that's, that's a focus area to manage IT costs, which can go awry if not controlled properly. So many times there's a separate planning and finance function. And then all of these sort of people or leaders that work for the CIO then map to specific business units at the highest level, and then they have teams within the business units that work within that work with teams underneath those IT leaders as well. So in this diagram, we show that as a VP structure, and the VP supports the business head and basically functions as the technology arm to enable that particular business unit. So with that, I conclude this overview section. I encourage those taking my class to continue viewing future sessions of that are made available in due course. So thank you for your attention, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.